Good afternoon and welcome. Welcome to the University of Wollongong and welcome to this marvellous exhibition that will be launching today. My name is Margie Jantti. I'm the Director of Library Services and I'll be your Master of Ceremonies for this afternoon. To begin, the University of Wollongong would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians, the Alauri, the Wadi Wadi and Darawal peoples on whose land we stand on today. We would like to pay our respects to elders past and present and for those who are yet to come. On behalf of the University of Wollongong Library, I wish to formally welcome you here today. Welcome to the family, the friends and the fans of Bert Flugelman, here today to officially launch this exhibition showcasing a carefully curated selection of items held in the UIW archives, along with the works from both the university's art collection and private collections. We especially welcome Bert's widow Rosemary and his daughter Kay here today. The Bert Flugelman collection held by the University of Wollongong archives comprises records created and collected by the artist and kindly donated by Kay Flugelman. These records include photographs, technical drawings, sketches, posters, personal papers, catalogues and related ephemera. A significant number of digitised slides from the collection are also viewable via archives online. The University of Wollongong Art Collection holds 54 Flugelman works, spanning a period from 1954 to 2011. And these collections are the result of purchases and generous donations received from both Kay Flugelman and the Flugelman estate, some of which were held exclusively by the family's private collection before being acquired by the University of Wollongong Art Collection. As many of you here will know, Bert was born in Vienna, Austria in 1923 and relocated to Australia with his family in 1938 at the age of 15, just prior to the commencement of the Second World War. Although training as a textile student in Vienna, he initially began work in this new country as a jackaroo. Some factory work followed, prior to his enlistment in the Australian Army in 1943. After completing his service, Bert took advantage of the opportunity afforded to him by the Commonwealth Reconstruction Training Scheme and enrolled in the National Arts School, Sydney. Although they didn't really get to know each other until later in Bert's tin sheds era, and long-time friend Guy Warren was also a student there during this time, and we warmly welcome you, Guy, here this afternoon. It was during a brief return to Vienna in the 1950s that Bert contracted polio, which emerged sometime later in 1952 while living and working in London. The impact of this may have provided insurmountable challenge to many, but not to Bert, who continued to work prolifically throughout his lifetime. From 1968 to 1972, Bert tutored at the University of Sydney Experimental Art Workshop, the Tin Sheds. Photographer Sam Beanstalk also tutored there during this time, and we wish to especially thank you for providing us with the images that are used as hero shots for this exhibition, so thank you very much, Sam. Bert lectured at the South Australian School of Art from 1972 to 1983. In 1984, he was engaged as a senior lecturer at the University of Wollongong in the School of Creative Arts, where he was instrumental in establishing the university's sculpture studio. Over many decades, Bert worked in almost every medium imaginable before finding his way to the large stainless steel sculptures which feature prominently throughout Australia. Cones in the National Gallery Sculpture Garden, the Develle Memorial Sculpture in Angel Place, Sydney, spheres, often referred to as Maul's balls, and previously, perhaps somewhat irreverently, Bert's balls, located in the Rundle Mall in Adelaide, South Australia. He certainly left his mark. Many of Bert's works can also be found locally, with a significant number of his works installed in and around the university grounds. This exhibition, however, curated by the library exhibitions coordinator Philippa Webb, who has worked closely with Bert's daughter Kay, moves us beyond these monumental public works to explore his multifaceted character and constant evolution as an artist. Wry artificer is not a term one hears every day. In fact, Google cites just 2 Irish references dating back to 1975 and 1802. It was Bert's longtime friend, Australian art critic and theorist Tom Brooke, who proposed this title after our exhibitions team struggled to find words to encapsulate this display. And after spending some time working out actually how to say the word artificer, and I hope I have actually said it correctly, found these words to be very apt indeed. The word wry, expressing dry, especially mocking, humour or distortion caused by refraction. An artificer, a skilled craftsman or inventor. 2 words that are very well connected for this exhibition. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce to you our keynote speaker, the Honourable Justice John Edwards Griffiths. John Griffiths has been a judge of the Federal Court of Australia since 2012. Prior to his appointment, he practiced for over 20 years as both a barrister and solicitor, and before that, he lectured at law at Cambridge University. He's a graduate of the Australian National University, Harvard University, and Cambridge University. John and his wife, Beth Jackson, knew Bert Flugelman as a close friend for more than 15 years. They were also fortunate to be custodians of Bert's many sculptures, maquettes and paintings. John delivered a tribute at Bert Flugelman's funeral in Sydney in March 2013. It's my pleasure to invite the Honourable Justice John Edwards Griffiths.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Margie. Rosie, Kay, friends and admirers of Bert Flugelman's work. It's appropriate if I commence, if I also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land where we are here today, the Wadi and other local Indigenous people, and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. It's appropriate that I say that because you'll forgive me if I'm a little bit hazy. I've just this morning flown in overnight with the red eye from Darwin, having spent all day yesterday at Jabiru, handing down our native title determination. So native title interests are very much close to my heart at the moment. This is a wonderful exhibition, and I'm thrilled to be able to give the keynote address. Beth and I knew Bert for over 15 years. We are, as Margie has said, avid collectors of his work, and we try and stay in touch as much as we can with Rosie, Kay, and the other members of the family. It's a great day for the family to be able to witness this homage to their father, dare I say it, one of Australia's greatest ever sculptors. The exhibition is aptly called The Wry Artificer. An artificer, for those of you who don't know, is a skillful or artistic, a craftsperson. The definition of that, and wry are over here for those of you who wish to verify that. Trust me, Bert Flugelman was the consummate artificer. His creativity covered the full range of the visual creative arts. Drawings, sketches, paintings, photographs, ceramics, clay pottery, and his extraordinary sculptures, which are made from a wide range of materials. Perhaps stainless steel, the one for which he's best known. Bert found it unrewarding to be consistent, as is reflected in the following words. He said, "The world is full of interesting, funny, excruciating things. My attention wanders, my appetite changes." A key turning point in Bert's creative life occurred in 1966, when his studio at Oyster Bay blew up. He lost pretty well everything, although I was reminded that there's one thing that remains, that brilliant self-portrait that we see here of the young Bert. If you look closely at it, you'll see the singes around the top. That one survived the fire. 2 acetylene gas cylinders exploded, triggered by an electrical fault. All windows in the entire street blew out, and some windows were broken more than a mile away. So says Kay, Bert's daughter, and we always believe everything Kay says. Bert certainly made a big impression on his neighbours. The value of this exhibition is that it captures Bert's response at the time and how his immediate state of depression in 1966 gave way to a state of excitement because, and I quote, "Here was a chance to start again with a clean slate. I was reborn. All my follies were burnt, along with the paintings that I thought were maybe undiscovered masterpieces, paintings that I'd kept too long. I put the lost work and the lost equipment out of my mind and concentrated on getting a new studio built as fast as possible." It was around this time that Bert's interest moved to art as event, environment, and process. Bert said that his work suddenly started to make sense. In 1969, he commenced work on one of his seminal sculptures, Tetrahedra, which comprises 6 equilateral tetrahedrons fabricated from aluminium. And the gentleman who's just looking to his right there is tracing the whole history of that magnificent work. The work itself is now displayed at the National Gallery of Victoria. Bert described how in 1971 he tried to create an environment at Sydney Tech, but the authorities disapproved, so he built it at his own house. The full description of it is over there behind Peter Hickey on the wall under Daily Telegraph Sunday, March 9, 1969. I'll read just a little bit to give you the flavour of Bert's environment. It had 2 main rooms. The first was piled high with junk, spray-painted cadmium yellow. Very brightly lit, a path of plastic offcuts with people buried in it wound its way through to a doorway. This led into a diminishing tunnel with a car headlight shining directly out. Past this one and merge into a large black box. Sand on the floor, huge plastic tubes moving to the touch with a spiral brush from a street sweeping machine winding itself up and then letting go. Music, noise was related to this. Quintessential Flugelman. It's the mark of a creative genius that they don't march to the beat of anyone else's drum. Bert's independence and defiance is brilliantly captured in Guy Warren's portrait of him, Flugelman with Wingman, which won the 1985 Archibald Prize, and the original of which we are all privileged to be able to admire round the corner here, and also to congratulate the painter himself, Guy Warren, sitting next to Rose. One of the features of this exhibition, for which the university is to be applauded, is its public accessibility, which is reinforced by the online digitised exhibition which introduces the Flugelman collection. The notion of public access to visual arts was very important to Bert. His works are displayed all around the country, not only in public galleries, but in public open spaces. So, reflect, for example, upon the Lawrence Hargrave Memorial up on Mount Kira, put there in 1988, lowered into place by a Chinook helicopter. Or the 25-metre long cones comprising 7 double stainless steel cones at the National Gallery in Canberra, put there in 1976. Many of you, no doubt, have admired it. Then there's the 19.5-metre high De Bell Memorial, now placed in Spring Street in Sydney since 1979, after a brief sojourn in Martin Place, which attracted the ire of the then Lord Mayor, Frank Sartor. Then there's the infamous spheres, to which Margie has already made reference. Better known to many as we've heard, Bert's balls. But we look around this room and we now have Bert's walls. And then, of course, there are numerous regional parks and places around the country where Bert's sculptures are displayed for everyone to appreciate. They include the Federation Arch in Orange, 2001, and his many sculptures in and around Bowral and the Southern Highlands, not to mention this university. As Bert said in 1975, I quote, "There is a place for public sculpture, for large environmental pieces that aren't really precious things at all, but that fit in with the environment, that become part and parcel of it. We buy and sell this stuff and move from city to city, and we live out of suitcases in a sense. And it seems to me that there is a very real need for public objects that give focal points and where you have continuity over a great period in time, even buildings." This exhibition brilliantly captures Bert's whimsicality and his impish sense of humour. Those traits are reflected in many of his works, particularly, if I may say so, of naked women. Les Blakeborough, Bert's pottery mate, who's here today, recalls talking to Bert one day when he was making one of his sensually rounded ladies. And Bert said to Les, "I am coiling my memoirs." Our favourite work of Beth and mine is Hello Sailor. The background is a piece of flat wood painted blue to depict water. The sailor is clearly Bert himself, wearing a wooden beret. His face is made of the round feet of a wardrobe, and his eyes and nose are doorknobs. An artist's paintbrush rests between his teeth. Bert looks triumphant. Alongside Bert is the head of a well-preserved and very dead cormorant. Therein hangs the tale. Bert and Rosemary had carefully nurtured over many years at their 60-acre rainforest hideaway in Jamberoo, not far from Guy Warren's shack, and where they lived from 1983 to 2002, a fine collection of expensive and very fat koi fish. Indeed, those fish inspired quite a few paintings by Bert. To Bert's horror, his entire stock of koi was eaten over several days by this marauding cormorant. Belying his otherwise gentle nature and temperament, and perhaps drawing on his rifle training during World War II, when he was with the Australian Army, Bert lay in wait until the cormorant paid the ultimate price. Hello Sailor says so much about Bert himself. It captures his sense of mischief, his extraordinary creativity, his amazing warmth, and his totally engaging sense of humour. These same qualities shine through other works by Bert, not the least in Tetrapus. That's the half an octopus with its shining stainless steel tentacles reaching up to the sky, which featured prominently in Sculpture by the Sea in 2007, and which is currently in Beth and my temporary stewardship. Maybe not for too much longer, however, as we've offered to donate that sculpture for prominent public display. Remarkably, the New South Wales Art Gallery does not have any of Bert Flugelman's works in its collection, nor does the Botanic Gardens. I use the word temporary stewardship deliberately a moment ago because Bert's extraordinary sculptures demand maximum public visibility. Through public exhibition, many people can experience the sheer delight which his sculptures engender. Bert's works, particularly those in stainless steel, have the extraordinary quality of both reflecting and distorting the immediate and wider environment in which they are set. The observer is compelled by Bert's ingenuity to view life through a different perspective and to reflect upon themselves and how they fit in the broader natural environment. His sculptures capture and reflect the movement of people and objects around them and seem to enhance their surrounding colours. How many of us have shared in the delight of young children cuddling and embracing the spheres in Rundle Mall in Adelaide, ecstatic at the sight of their own distorted reflections in what must strike them as two giant round silver Christmas tree decorations? Beth and I hope that Tetrapus finds an equally suitable public home. Bert drew great pleasure from getting people close up to his sculptures and indeed touching his sculptures. He said once, "What pleases me most is that kids have a great time with them. Families sit on them for photos. Because my sculptures are not representational, people do not feel threatened by them. Maybe that's why they are seldom vandalised." Surely there is no other Australian sculptor whose works are displayed in so many different public places all around this country. That may partly explain why in 2006 Bert became a member of the Order of Australia, recognising his outstanding creative talents. How fitting it is that this university, where Bert spent many years until he retired in 1991 as a professorial fellow, honours him and his family in this distinctive way. The exhibition is, and will continue to be, a resounding success. This particular physical exhibition will be open for people to admire for 5 months, and then the world at large will be able to have access to the digitised collection which the university now houses as a result of the extraordinary generosity of Kay and Rosie. I congratulate Philippa Webb, the curator, who has done a magnificent job. I thank Margie for everything that she has done in her role as Director of Library Services, and I also thank Karen for all the work that she has done in bringing about this event today. All in all, congratulations, Wollongong University, on this innovative and impressive homage to dear Bert Flugelman.
Thank you so much for those remarkable words and reminiscences. I now introduce to you Mr. Ken Orchard. Ken is an artist who has worked in a range of diverse media, including printmaking, photography, drawing, artist books and sculpture. He is also a scholar of the Australian colonial art and photography. Ken studied with Bert Flugelman at the South Australian School of Art in 1981 to 1982. During this time, they established a friendship that endured up to the time of Bert's death. Ken also lectured in visual arts at the Faculty of Creative Arts at the University of Wollongong from 1992 to 1998. And he lived with the Flugelmans in the Jamberoo Forest for a number of years. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Ken Orchard.
Thank you very much. Just before I start, I'd like to just point out to people that this little drawing here that belongs to Kay, it's loaned for the exhibition, is actually going to the 10th of November 1952, so it's 66 years old from the day that he was up on the top of the Australia House on the Strand in London, and I only know that by looking closely at the work this afternoon. So for me this is a very comprehensive view of Bert's whole life work. This little one here. And there's another related one there without a date. I've been the last couple of days with Guy Warren in Sydney, and I feel as though that's been a beautiful segue to be here today for Bert's exhibition. because Bert and Guy go back a very long way, in fact, to before the day of that first drawing in the show. It's quite an emotional thing for me to be here today. I feel very honoured to be invited by the university to help open this exhibition and to pay tribute to Bert. He's an outstanding artist, but he's also an outstanding arts educator. Doubly so because I think he made such a significant contribution to the teaching programs here at the university and to the university at large and the Illawarra region, where he lived from 1983 onwards. There's not a day that goes by when I don't think Bert in some way, as an example. And I have a photograph of Bert that stands just around the side of my kitchen area, which I took probably about the early 90s of him standing in the studio. It's one of my favourite photographs of him. And we also have, my wife and I, Sabina, we've got a little watercolour that's in the kitchen not far from there, which is the studio, not the studio, but the workshop at Jamberoo in the forest, which I helped Bert build. So he's still very much a presence in-house, in our home. This is the first substantial expose of Bert's work since his passing in January of 2013. And one of its evident merits is that it helps to place part of his life, his creative output while he was here in Wollongong in a much richer and deeper historical context. I'd really like to thank Philippa Webb, the curator of the exhibition and designer of the exhibition, along with the communication events coordinator Karen Oleska for all of their nurturing of me through this process. Thank you. And to Pia Petrie, who also works here in the Michael Burt Library, including Michael Organ, archivist here at the University Library. Some of these people I've known for a long time, not very well, but others quite well. And I just think their sustained efforts over what's been probably a fairly long period because of other influences within the library and the university itself, that they've stayed on the horse and brought it to this point. So you're really to be commended for that. I think this exhibition, as a sort of subtitle, could be what might be referred to as the life stages of Bert Flugelman, from embryonic chrysalis to master wingman, which is a thought that occurred to me when I was thinking about putting some notes down for the show. Importantly, I would also like to acknowledge here Bert's eldest daughter Kay and Bert's wife Rosie for the development of this exhibition, because it's their demonstrated fortitude and foresight to make the donations of works and the archival record that Bert accrued throughout his life available in a permanent way to this university so that it can be made accessible. Their generosity will help future scholarship, I'm sure, in the Illawarra region generally, not just in Bert's context of Bert's work, but also I think the generation of a whole lot of creative activity that happened from the late 70s through to current times. It's really an important engine for that bigger project to happen. I'd also like to acknowledge here too the important role of my wife Sabina Orchard-Simonides, who developed a lot of the materials that have enabled an exhibition of this scope to be manifest. She unfortunately can't be here today because of family commitments. We've got two children, 17 and 19, who are undergoing exams this week, so we're right in the middle of exam time and we can't abandon them for the joys of the Illawarra. But Sabina's doctoral thesis, Bert Flugelman, an Austrian-born Australian artist, which she completed in 1998, provides a significant capture of the life and work of the artist, and it's a document that is underpinned by Bert's role and his generosity in the process of bringing all that material together through interview, opening the archives up for that process to happen, and it's been, I think, a document that will provide will continue to provide a sound historical context for further work and other exhibitions to take place. Speaking personally, I first met Bert in 1980 at the inaugural book launch of Robert Hughes's Shock of the New, which was launched, funnily enough, in Adelaide. So Robert Hughes had flown over from New York, and the first launch of that book occurred at the Standard Books in Wollongong Mall. And I was then 21 years old. I'd left art school for a couple of years, but on that night I remember Don Dunstan, our former Premier, making a speech, and he invited Robert Hughes to speak about the book, for the book launch. And as outstanding as that event was, graced by these two particular people, one a great statesman, the other one a great writer and raconteur, I also clearly remember Bert wearing his trademark knee-high black boots, his black leather jacket, and I think possibly even his black beret on that occasion. He stood out, and I remember hesitantly taking the opportunity to talk to him on that night because I was thinking about returning to art school, which I did the following year when I became a student of Bert's in the sculpture department. And I stayed a student for 2 years before Bert left for Wollongong in 1983, as we've heard. And it was during this period that I really developed a firm friendship with Bert. And I think I feel incredibly fortunate in that encounter because he became a touchstone in my life for the next 3 decades. And my life would be quite something different if I hadn't had that connection with him. I'm sure that there are many people here today, too, that feel the same way. Over these years, I had the gift of Bert's unwavering support, encouragement, insightful guidance and good humour. And my association with Bert and Jamboree, which is a different sort of subset of why we're here today, went back to 1983 when Bert bought a prefabricated hut which was flat packed like an IKEA pack on the back of a tandem trailer from Adelaide to the Illawarra and trundled it down into the forest. And this particular structure, which is still there in the forest, was prefabricated in the workshop at the SA School of Art in Adelaide. And I was involved in the journey and the difficult circumstances of getting that material down into the forest at jackknifed at the last corner. The later studios where much of Bert's work was executed that we see in this exhibition, the hut was a forerunner to 2 other rainforest homes built at this unique site. The first structure was designed by Ross Feller, who's here with us today, and it's fantastic that you're here. It's great to see you. And it was in that studio that I lived for a couple of years with the Flugelmans. The second studio, the bigger studio attached to the house, which is still currently there in the forest, Bert and Rosemary sadly had to leave in 2001. But this house, which is a fabulous structure in the forest, was built and completed by Ian Frew and Rosemary's late son, Jonathan Greenwell, who were both talented craftsmen in their own right in 1989. And I watched that building through a series of processes, the site being cleared and it being built. Just coming to Bert's work now, one of my favourite works, which the photograph of which is on the back wall, is called a stainless steel work from 1975, called Not, or Not to be Taken Lightly, which makes a nice reflection on the title of this exhibition, because there's always an underpinning of a double meaning in lots of Bert's work. And that particular work is now very astutely located in the lower part of Light Square in the middle of Adelaide, in the CBD, centred on a sight line, very accurately shared by the elegant monumental stone obelisk sculpture dedicated to the city founder and its first colonial surveyor, Colonel William Light. Both of these sculptures, in their oppositional formats, one rocket-like in its verticality, and the other gracefully supine in its horizontal curvature, photographs in the exhibition. One of obdurate stone and the other in hardened steel, and one officially memorialising a colonial forefather, and the other playfully punning self-reflexively on its own materiality and its stately gravity in its context, spark off of each other in a really interesting way, which possibly wasn't intended by the artist. And this has been added to in recent times, very recent times, because that sculptural conversation has been amplified by the addition of a large pink metal abstracted sculpture called Dante, fabricated by Bert's grandson, Stephen Bellasquada, who he and his girlfriend are here today, which is fantastic too, to see you here. And that's located on the corner of Hindley and Morford Street. So there's a sort of triple conversation that's suddenly developed over a long period of time in Light Square. And the next time you're in Adelaide, you should avail yourself to go and look at that. It's not so well appreciated to know that Bert, in making Knot, which was manufactured in Melbourne, not Adelaide, at Bristers made the spheres. They manufactured the cones, which were then joined together. They were left on a semi-trailer outside the art school in 1982. I remember it being tucked away in the back of a huge flatbed a really big vehicle, and it made the journey all the way from Adelaide across the Hay Plain to Canberra. I think it was sited at the site in 1982, just prior to the opening, the launching of the National Gallery. And over the years, as we've all seen, that work in its various forms has been totally gathered in by not building as such, but by all the vegetation that's captured up with the sculpture garden, and it looks fantastic there now. But coming back to the Knot, to make the work, which was very technically challenging, which is why Bert had to go out of Adelaide and go to Melbourne to have it made, was that he had to also sell his yellow Volvo car to cover the cost of the fabrication. So he made a lot of sacrifices in the process of following his creative life. It was actually installed first, not in Light Square, but at the front of the Art Gallery of South Australia. And the photograph here in the exhibition is dated 1988. So the great touring exhibition, the Great Australian Art Exhibition that I think Daniel Thomas and Ron Radford curated in '88, if I remember rightly, was on display at the State Gallery in Adelaide at that time. And the hoardings for that show, the advertising, which is still the kind of drop screens that they put up, their show advertising, is actually captured in that photograph too. So it dates from '88, but I think it was actually in front of our State Gallery in Adelaide a long time before that. And Ian North, the curator, who's now sort of curator emeritus at the State Gallery, was instrumental in acquiring that work for the City of Adelaide. It's 10 years since the publication of the excellent monograph on the work of Bert Flugelman, subtitled Upon Further Reflection. Many of you will probably know that book. It's written by one of Bert's many admirers, the late Peter Pinson, and accompanied by photographs taken by David Perry. And this book records the development of Bert's public sculpture, particularly. So it's quite a focused book, from the 1970s up to 2000 or so. And I'm saddened that Peter can't be amongst us today to see this exhibition. It's in this book that it becomes clear that Bert's ambition was a very comprehensive and powerful one, sustained over a very long period, a lifetime, and despite setbacks and financial constraints, such as I've alluded to, and the shifting emphases on its reception of his work in the day, he kept up the steady pursuit of a territory that he came to claim as his own, and he playfully explored variations on the theme that he described as the irreducible solids. And we have small wire kind of sketches or doodles in 3 dimensions out there in that showcase there, which are a lovely part to have in this exhibition. They're kind of like a sculptor's sketch, if you like, in fine wire. The sphere, the cube, the cone, the pyramid, the tetrahedron, to give name to the obvious forms, are all wrought in stainless steel, with variations on scale, replication, interconnections and illusions, in which in Bert's assured hands became objects imbued with that quality which Peter Pinson has so aptly described as their Euclidean purity. 40 years ago, the City of Wollongong Gallery, Wollongong City Gallery, had the foresight to acquire Bert's wave and spiral sculpture, which stood at the site of the first Wollongong City Gallery and has now been standing in front of the current Wollongong City Gallery for a long time. 30 years have passed since the Australian Bicentennial. I'm getting old. And Bert completed the Lawrence Hargrave Memorial Sculpture in that year, and it still stands poised, hovering over the city of Wollongong. It's a fantastic work, and I'd really encourage you all to, if you get the chance, to look at the virtual gallery outside the space, to be able to look at that work in scale in front of you on the carpet here, and you can look up and see the forms, the underforms of the wings of the wingman, and one's a blade and the other one's a flat plane, quite a thick plane. It's really amazing to see that brought into the space, into the exhibition, like the other works, 6 other works. So I think that's a great extension of the exhibition in terms of understanding the scale of Bert's work, those public works. In the same period, 1988, Bert completed his transition series. There are 4 of, I think, 7 pieces in that series here that now form part of the university collection. And it's greeted people for quite a few years coming into the old entrance to this library, I think, if I remember rightly. I have to say that it's been 20 years, dare I say, since I last set foot on this campus, so my memories are a little bit shaky. But this particular work, what I like about this work is it doesn't impose any overly overt blandishment on people's concentration or the reason that they come to the library. It's just quietly there. It's facets, it's shiny, but it's also dull. It's got beautiful drawings, surfaces on that work are really quite lovely. And the way that the wood and the steel work together, to me, this is a very complex and accomplished work, and I think it's one of Bert's breakthrough works in lots of ways that led to lots of other things after the 80s. And I think it's fantastic to see that the university is the custodians of that work, to have it here in Wollongong. I remember seeing it in Sydney. I think it was shown at the Irving Gallery in Glebe originally, or perhaps the maquettes for it in '88. But in the drawings for the work, the transition series, also in the university archives, are beautiful expressions of the process of an artist thinking through to a point of resolution about the sculptural result. And they give evidence of a mind fully fettered with an engineer's understanding of drafting processes, which emphasise and convey workshop directives for other people to be able to interpret and to help fabricate those forms. They are also cast in the context of being complete drawings by an artist that stand out for not being just simply sketches of something realised afterwards, but are drawings which you can sense that they're an integral part of helping develop the work, to understand the work and how it comes to be manifest in 3 dimensions. In his last years, Bert's these directives were expressed with perfect pitch in his relationship and interaction with the artist and jeweller Ian Frew, and who assisted Bert to realise Bert's final decade of work. Mostly these works are wrought in the medium of copper, and Bert's creative journey thereby, his vision was certainly sustained on a very high note, and with Ian's skill in a beautifully realised curvilinear forms and contrasting volumes. and they're compounded in their elegance with flourishes of detail that break out into the open space. And I think Tetrapus is one of those works too that have that same quality. And these works are unique in Australian sculpture. I could go on about sculptor Flugelman. The address sculptor Flugelman was given to Bert one day. He had a phone call anonymously from an old woman, a socialite in Sydney, perhaps somewhere, and she rang him up, put his phone number, and Bert was tickled pink that there was a woman that had rung him up, cold call, asking for sculptor Flugelman. And he had his identity by that stage in the early 90s very much firmly established. But to finish today, the wise truism words of the 14th century Dominican philosopher St. Catherine of Siena spring to mind. I heard them the other evening at my daughter Amelia's Year 12 graduation. When one glances back across the whole scope of Bert's life work and his many achievements, I think on these words now, and that is, nothing great is ever achieved without great endurance. And Bert certainly demonstrated he possessed that capacity throughout his long and eventful life. His enduring artistic achievements are evident to all who view his work, and it's so fitting and right that Bert's first major posthumous exhibition should be staged here at the campus and within the walls of the Michael Bert Library. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ken. There's always something wonderful about a launch of an exhibition such as this. And it's the stories that are shared, the reminiscences and so forth, that add to the curatorial story that's already been created to bring this experience to you. At the heart of our vision here at the University of Wollongong Library is to transform how people discover and experience knowledge. And I hope today is an example of that, in terms of being able to hear the stories and narratives of people who loved Bert, who were great friends as well as fans and colleagues, and you can feel the camaraderie in the room just listening to the stories that are being shared and the thoughts that are being remembered over the course of this afternoon. So today you will have the opportunity to walk through the exhibition, to see it, to hear stories, interviews, and to have some augmented reality experiences. I recommend that you might do that after you've had a glass of wine, otherwise you might make yourself a little bit giddy. So it's on that note that I'm very honoured to officially launch this exhibition. And we're very grateful to Kay and Rosemary and the Flugelman estate for your generous gifts and the generous loans that you've made to the University of Wollongong. We hope that you know that your work is entrusted in very good hands. I'd also like to take this opportunity to thank the large team who brought this exhibition together. I'd like to start with Philippa Webb, who is the curator. And many of you know Philippa quite well, and for those of you who this is the first time you get to meet her, you get a fabulous sense of her absolute skill, determination, perseverance, and genuine love for all things art. I've watched Philippa from afar, pulling this exhibition together, and the amount of research and reflection and reiteration of ideas and so forth has brought this wonderful experience to you. So congratulations, Philippa. She's also... And if I've forgotten anyone, please forgive me. A name that hasn't been mentioned this afternoon is Noel, and Noel is behind many of you here. Noel has enabled the digitisation of the augmented reality experience, and he was working here quite late last night, so thank you very much, Noel. Pia Pietri, Karen Aleska, I'm assuming Stephanie and Nadine from the archives team have been very much involved, and we have a number of our staff who have volunteered to work with us today. And I also would like to say thank you to Leonie Sassel from Sassy Catering. Now, before you actually go and eat anything, I ask you to actually look at the way that the food has actually been curated today. And before it has been curated as well as created. So, yes.
I think you're right.
Yes, of course.
She's been amazing. This is Leonie.
And I'd also like to pay special thanks to our speakers today, the Honourable Justice John Edward Griffiths and Mr Ken Orchard. This exhibition will be available to be viewed until the end of March. So please come back, invite your friends, invite your colleagues to come and visit this exhibition. I think it's something that you will find something new each time you walk through it. And as has been mentioned previously, after the exhibition does come to a close, you will be able to return to it through our online University of Wollongong Archives portal. We also have details about our 2019 exhibition program near the visitors sign-in book, and I hope each and every one of you does provide a sign-in to show that you were here today. So on that note, the formal proceedings of today's launch will come to a close. We do have refreshments available to you, and then just take the time, be part of this story, reflect, enjoy. There'll be laughter, there may be a few tears, and that's all okay because this is a very moving, important exhibition. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. That was lovely. You all know each other so well. And I just there is